It's always a pleasure to talk about the things I've learned with JSXGraph. Um, so yes, as you mentioned, this is an extension from what I presented on last year, which was an introduction for teachers who want to use JSXGraph to create some interactive web apps. But certainly, as you're developing web apps, you'll run into problems along the way. And one thing that I wanted to include last year was how to debug simple issues. But I found that I wasn't going to be able to include that in the time frame. So I'm continuing on last year's and showing what to do with some when issues arise. All right, I'm going to share screen. Let's see, that should be the correct one. Okay. And I have started a very simple bare bones JSX graph application. As you can see, just the basic imports, for a JSX graph library. I created a location for the JSX graph board to be put on my website and created a board, just a basic one. And that's what this looks like right over here. I haven't added anything onto it yet, but I'm going to add some things. And then some of you will probably notice as I go along that there will be some incorrect code. Um, that's probably meant to be the case. Sometimes I might just mess up by myself. So if you're starting off creating an app, you'll want to start small. Okay. So let's just put in a single line that's going to add in a point on the board here. So I'm going to create a point, board.create, and I'm going to just put it on the board somewhere. Okay. Now, as I come over to my board here on my browser, when I refresh this, I should see my point show up. Okay, it didn't show up. I'm sure most of you noticed why. But if you're just starting off, you might run into errors that uh, you don't really know. You expect something to happen, but you don't really notice happening it on screen. And trying to figure out the reasons why is an important tactic in correcting those mistakes and making an effective applet. So built into uh, I think all browsers, at least all browsers I'm familiar with. So Chrome, Firefox, Safari, I believe Edge, but I don't have much experience with that. There is very powerful and impressive browser tools which will help you debug issues. So how you get into those browser tools might differ from one browser to the next, but they all have the same basic functionality. At least that has been my experience. And they have a couple of items that are particularly useful with respect to JSX graph applications. So I'm using Firefox, and the way that I get into the browser tools, just the hamburger icon here, and then down to more tools and web developer tools. And right here in the window, it gives me, by default, usually it shows your browser console. And that's a really helpful item because it displays error messages, warnings that you might run into, and also allows you to interact with your application kind of in real time. So you can see the effect of different changes that you might make. So as you can see here, I have an error, and it's telling me that JSXGraph is reporting I'm trying to create an unknown element type. Uh, I'm not even sure how I would pronounce that, but I misspelled point. So if I were to correct that, so we'll just fix my misspelling, save, and then refresh. We should now see the point being made in the browser. Okay, so that is just having the browser console available while you're developing app is very helpful because it will tell you if errors come up along the way, and then will allow you to make corrections. Now, sometimes the error messages are very helpful and they will point you right to where the issue is. Sometimes they're a little bit more vague, or sometimes it's just a warning. So it sort of depends on your individual situation as to how helpful that may or may not be. But if you run into errors, certainly you want to know that that's occurring. So having those open while developing is great. Now, as I also mentioned, you can use the console not just to look at error messages that show up, but you can also use it to interact with the app in real time. And in fact, if you're developing web pages in general, you can modify the entire document object model of the website. But just to show you what I mean, so I've named my point A in the browser, in the program. So in the console, I can interact with that and I can say, all right, A, so it's locating that variable. And then what's also nice is it brings up a list of functions as I type things in. So for instance, if I hit A and then dot, it's going to bring up all the functions that will work with my variable. All right, so for instance, let's say I want to change the color of it. Okay, so it looks like this function fill color will do that. So I'm going to use that, and I want to change my point to blue. Well, it's not very large on screen. It did change the color of the face to blue, but it did so, and also it provided a warning. So the function fill color, I'm being told here, has been deprecated, and I should be using set attribute instead. Okay, so I'll keep that in mind as I continue developing things. That's not the correct function to use, but those kinds of warnings you wouldn't see unless you have the browser console up as well. All right, there are some things that are very helpful that you can do in the browser console as also. Like for instance, if I want to know where exactly my point is located, if it shows up off screen and I can't see it, there is a function for the X and the Y coordinates, and I can use the browser console to just tell me exactly what those values are. And I'm sure that's coming up very small on your screens, but it is coming up as -8 and -5 where it's supposed to be on screen. So the browser console, as I'm developing an application, I have it open the entire time. It's invaluable in terms of like figuring out where errors are and how to make code correct as expected. Now, there is a lot of tools available here. If I extend this window, you can kind of see like there's an object inspector, which is good if you're developing websites. There's a network connection, so like it tells you like which websites your app is kind of connecting to. There's all kinds of things that I only vaguely know what most of it does. But the console is absolutely useful while developing applications. But in addition, there's also the debugger. And the debugger is absolutely great in terms of finding errors that They are not necessarily like typographical errors. Your browser console will help you find things like that. Like I misspelled the word point and it helped me find that. I tried to use a function that was deprecated and the browser console helped me find that. But if we create code that is syntactically correct, but doesn't provide the correct values that we're looking for, those are things that are harder to debug. And so that's what I'm going to show next here. But I need to add in some more code here. So I'm going to create some more points. Let's be, and you know what? I actually just have it over here. So I'm just going to copy and paste. Um, let's make another point and a line passing through it. Okay, so everything should be fine there. And as I'm developing, I generally don't add too much to my project at a time and just verify that I'm getting what I want as I add lines to the code. Okay. All right. Now, let's say that I would like to basically make a circle between these 2 points here. But to do that, if if you look up the way to create a circle in the JSXGraph API, I believe what it expects is the midpoint of the circle and the center of the circle, sorry, and the radius. If I want to create the circle going through these 2 points, then I need the midpoint of those. So let me make the midpoint. Uh, JSXGraph has the ability to make a midpoint between 2 points. Um, and I don't want this point to be labeled. I'm just going to turn the label off here. And then after that, I'm going to create my circle. Okay, nice. So I have my circle that I expected. Now, what I would like to do is I would like to label this point with, say, the area of the circle. Okay. So I'm going to create a function that will calculate the area of a circle, and then I'm going to create a text box that will display it. So the area of a circle, okay, familiar formula, just pi r squared. And then I want to display that area. So I'm going to create a text box. And that text box is going to be anchored at the midpoint. And then I'm going to make it a little bit larger so you can read it as it's being displayed. So just creating a text box. Initially, I'm putting it at the origin, but it's going to anchor toward the midpoint anyway. Um, and then it calls my function getArea, and it uses the radius of the circle, which is nice because in the console, like for instance, I have my circle object here. If you browse through the available items, you'd find that an available item to you is just the radius of the circle, just as a point. And so you can use that in developing the area. Now, also, there's also a function that will calculate the area, but you know, that's what I wanted to do on screen here so I can make a mistake and we can find out where that mistake is. Okay, so I have my function here, which is going to calculate my area. Everything looks good to me so far. Let's see what happens. Okay, so my area shows up as 24, which is possibly correct. It seems maybe a little small. If I move my circle around, that doesn't seem so right because it seems like it's always 24. Now, Um, let's see if we can figure out what the issue might be here. So if we try the debugger, okay, the nice thing about the debugger is that it can allow you to execute code down to a certain point and then stop execution. All right, so for instance, I'm going to insert what's called a breakpoint right here. So I just click on the line number where my get area function is. And that breakpoint, what it's going to let me do when I refresh, it's going to run the program up until that particular point, and then it's going to stop. And this way I can try to inspect what the issue is with respect to my area here, because it looks fine to me, pi times the radius squared. That's the formula from high school or, elementary school of finding the radius of the area of a circle. Now, when I it's there one thing that's nice are these watch expressions. And you can enter a single variable and you can determine what the value of that variable is at any particular point in time of the program. You can add a lot of different variables, or you can add an entire expression. So like if I want to see what's happening when I do math.pi times the radius squared. So this certainly does result in 24, which is a bit strange because if I grab a calculator, let's just see what happens over here off to the side. So approximately 3.14 times a radius of 8.32, and I square that, I should be getting in the neighborhood of 217, not 24. So this lets me isolate where my problem is. There's something wrong with this particular statement. And what it is of course, that the caret key here is not how we do the calculation of squares in JavaScript. They have the function math.pow. I could use that, and now I'm getting the correct radius. Or I believe it's now fine to use this the same operator that's found in Python. So we can square a value this way. But that's where my issue is, and that's where I need to make a correction. So those browser tools, being able to stop the execution at a specific point, and then observe the value of variables at that point, it's very helpful in determining where an error is. So now everything, well, it's not updating, but at least I'm getting the correct area here. Okay. Uh, Now the next thing I want to do here is I want to that line that I created, I want to write in what the equation of that line is. So I'm going to make another quick change to everything. Um, let's see. I'm going to get rid of my area text here. In fact, I think I'll get rid of my circle altogether. I don't need my circle any longer for this part. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to write in what the equation of that line is. So I've already got some code here to do that, and it's basically very similar to what I just did with the circle. So I have the text here for my equation. That shouldn't just be slope, that should be equation, right? And it pulls a line equation from a function, centers it at that midpoint that's already existing. The line equation here has another function that's called getSlope. So it's going to calculate the slope of the line and then calculate the y-intercept. And then it's going to display the line equation. Now, this line equation is kind of strange looking. It's only to eliminate the if you have a negative number and you just put plus a like you end up with plus a negative, and it just, to make the equation look cleaner, I've got a little bit more advanced statement there. But as you can see here, I've got my slope, intercept based off of just basic formulas from algebra. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see my line equation centered at the midpoint. And as I change these points here, that line equation is updating. But you can also see there's definitely a problem because the slope here is clearly a positive slope, but it's coming up as a negative number. The y-intercept here is reported at -75, and that's supposed to be around 1. So we need to figure out where the issue is here. And so we're going to try and debug this. So there's something wrong with my line equation. All right, so I'm going to start off here, making a breakpoint inside the function that makes that line equation. And rerun, and then it's going to stop there. So then it's going to call this function getSlope. So if I want to see if that's where the issue is. So the next thing I want to show about these tools here is you have the ability to, like at this point, once you've paused the execution, you can run the code line by line and then use your watches to kind of observe values of variables. So for instance, if the slope function, I want to run this code, but I actually want to see what's happening inside this function. So right down here, you have these additional tools. This means to continue execution, run it as normal. This means to step over the next line. So if you have a function, it will just run the function and not go into it. And this will step into. So it will allow me to step into the function getSlope. So I'm going to do that. And oh, it went into a different one. I want to go into getSlope. I think it's going into some JSXGraph ones. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to make another breakpoint here instead, which will put me into the getSlope function. Sorry, that was unexpected. Okay, but the thing is, you can step through the code after you've paused it. All right, so now I'm looking at my getSlope function, and I can see here, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, that's all expected. But if you'll notice, I've got a minus in between those instead of a divide. So that's actually where the error is in this particular one. So I can fix that. I can go back to my code here and I can correct that. And that should I need to get rid of my breakpoint because it will pause anytime you have a breakpoint available. And now I can look at the equation here, and now it's looking a little bit more reasonable. You can see is when I get the line going through 2, you can see the y-intercept looks correct there. If I try to get a line that would have a slope 1, then that's matching up. That's positive. This would be a negative slope. So now everything looks like it's working correctly. But that is when I am developing applications in JSXGraph. The debugging tools and the console I have up and available all the time, and that's how I generally develop things, is add a few lines of code, and then once I run the code, if it looks like something's wrong, I try and figure out where the error is using one of those two tools available until I get it working correctly. So that's all I have.